Well, hello everyone and welcome to Virtual Wellness Wednesday. We're really excited to see over 30 of you joining us for this meeting with our guest speaker, Jordan Burnham, on the call. And if you guys are joining us for the first time, we just ask that you sign in to our meeting link at bit.ly/OMM-sign-in. Lauren did chat that in the box so we can make sure we send everyone a recap email after the meeting is done. Just so you're aware, the meeting is being recorded. And we ask that you mute yourself when you're not speaking and mute any cell phones to avoid any distractions. You can use the chat box to write questions or comments during the presentation. You can send those to everyone, or you can also send them directly to myself, Laura Beth, or Lauren Anderson. And lastly, if you need any mental health support during this presentation, please privately chat Lauren so we can make sure you have the resources you need. So we have a great agenda planned for you this afternoon. We'll start with our opening ritual of Rose, Thorn, Bud, where we use our pronouns. We have guest speaker Jordan Burnham on the phone. We always go over some club business and announcements. We end with mindfulness led by Lauren Anderson and our weekly virtual challenge. So we'll get started with our opening ritual, and just because there's so many people on the phone, we're going to do a statement of gratitude instead of our Rose, Thorn, Bud ritual. So that way more people get a chance to go. We might not get through everyone, and we might just have everyone chat in the box what they're grateful for, but we'll get through as many people as we can. So my name is Laura Beth, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. My statement of gratitude for today is that the weather forecast here in Fairfax, Virginia, it's a little bit more pleasant than last week, a little bit more sun, and that really does a lot for my mood. And so I might just call on people to share. So if I can have Jada share next.
I am Jada. I go by she, her, hers pronouns, and I am grateful that today I was able to get on a walk with my mom for a nice amount of time.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Jada. What about Amber? Alrighty, Anastasia.
Hello, I'm grateful I got to drive for a while today, so that's good because I still have my permit, so I'm still practicing and driving, and that was fun.
Great. Andrew?
So I just went out for a run for like 20 minutes, and it was really nice. It was nice to get outside.
That does sound nice. Christian?
I'm grateful that I'm able to spend time more with my family.
Thank you. Emerson?
I'm grateful that I went to my chiropractor today and it hurt way less than on Monday. So I feel like I'm making progress.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Hope?
I'm Hope, and my pronouns are she, hers, her. And I'm grateful for today that I had time to play the violin, and I haven't done that in a while.
Awesome. What about Jill?
I use she, her, hers pronouns, and my rose for today was that I was able to go out on a walk with my dog.
Awesome. What about one of our alumni, Megan Church?
Okay, I'm Megan. I use she, her, hers. And even though all my classes are online now, I have gotten to sleep more. So I'm very grateful for that.
Great. Sean.
Oh, hello. I used pronouns he, him, his, and I'm grateful that I was able to play my acoustic guitar today to lighten up the mood a little bit.
Great. Taylor. Alrighty. Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm still new to this, but this week I'm grateful that I get to spend a lot of time with my little brother and babysitting him, and while my parents are at work. So I just get to spend the whole day with him, and I'm grateful for that.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Alrighty. Jake. All right, maybe I'll have everyone else maybe that didn't get a chance to go, if you want to chat us in the chat box what you're grateful for today. We would love to read that. And then we'll have, can we hear from Jordan what you're grateful for today?
Yeah, so I'm Jordan. I go by he, him, his. I would say I am grateful for my fiance being really patient as I play video games, even though she needs to use the living room. So I'm grateful for that.
That's awesome. Alrighty, we got Michaela. Grateful for the ukulele. Grateful for virtual trivia night. That's awesome. Be able to do schoolwork today. Awesome. Thai food. Yum. Getting to talk to my friends. Getting to talk to my students on the phone and find out that they've been okay. That's awesome. Keep them coming. Grateful for a friend that got into the college that you're going to. You made almond milk? That's so cool. Alrighty, well, if you didn't get a chance to type yet, we're still gonna read yours, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna turn it over to our guest speaker, Jordan Burnham today, and he's gonna be telling his story. So the floor is all yours, our virtual floor.
All right, this is exciting because I've never done this before, so this is new for me. But my name is Jordan, and so yeah, I'm a public speaker on mental health and suicide prevention. So I speak for this organization called Minding Your Mind, and one of the things that we do at Minding Your Mind is we have young adult speakers go into middle schools, high schools, colleges. We share our stories and speak on the subject of mental health. So that's what I've been fortunate enough to do over the last 11 years now. So I'll just go ahead and start my story off with third grade. So when I was in third grade, I had to switch schools, going from a private to a public school because my dad switched jobs. And it was awful. I was going in thinking, you know, when I switch schools, everyone's going to be very accepting of who I am as a human and be kind and thoughtful with their words. But that didn't happen. And I struggled a lot because I got picked on, got beat up a few times, and I really wasn't sure who to talk to about how I was feeling and the pain that I was feeling. But I would get home after school and I would talk to my sister because she was going through the same type of problems, the same type of issues. So when I got home after school, it's like my sister became my therapist and I became hers because she could relate to everything I was going through, vice versa. That's how we became close, best friends going through elementary school into middle school. Now, besides talking to my sister, I pretty much used three main coping mechanisms to cope with whatever I was going through. And the first is sports, because I love to watch, love to play sports. I played basketball, I played baseball, but to this day, my favorite sport, my best sport is golf. The second thing was I was always a class clown. I use humor a lot as a way to not only cope with some of the things I was feeling, but also as a way to make other people laugh. and I love being able to do that. And the third thing, whenever I was struggling and I felt like I was isolating, I would force myself to be social. I would make sure that I was involved in some type of school activity just to meet new people, just to gain friends. And that's something that really helps me going through elementary school into middle school. And so once I got to middle school, I finally felt comfortable in my environment, the people around me and the friends around me. But seventh grade comes around and two major things happen. So the first was my sister goes off to college, and I was happy for her. I was proud of her. She got an academic scholarship to go to Penn State University. And even though I was really happy and proud of her, that's my best friend leaving. I don't know who to talk to now whenever I'm having a bad day. Who's going to be that one person I can go and vent to? I don't have my best friend anymore. Second major thing that happens is my dad goes to interview for a job at a high school outside of Philadelphia. So it's sad to think about this now, but it's still one of my favorite stories. Is my dad comes home and he tells me I'm going to interview for this job at a high school outside of Philadelphia. So I asked him, Dad, what job? And he said, Upper Marion. And I jumped up. I got so excited. It's like, Dad, give me a hug. I'm so proud of you. That's amazing. That's where Kobe Bryant went. We made it. And he said, no, Jordan, Kobe went to Lower Marion, but are you still proud of me? I was like, Dad, no, but still supported him on this job interview. So he gets it. In the seventh grade, I've switched schools again. It was the same thing as far as having a hard time getting adjusted, meeting new people, making friends. The only difference was my sister isn't there after school to talk about what I'm going through. So this was the first time I kept any depressed, lonely thoughts to myself. I didn't talk about it. And we had a school counselor at my middle school. She had her own office. You could go there whenever you wanted, but I thought you only talked to a therapist or a counselor in an extreme situation, like someone close to you passing away or your parents going through a divorce. I didn't know I could walk into her office and say, hey, I'm having a bad week. Can we please talk about it? So I shied away from her office. But going through 7th and 8th grade, I was able to tell jokes, play sports, gain some friends. That going into 9th grade, I was voted class president, which is something I should have been happy, proud of, but at the same time, I felt like I was in a community, but I wasn't really a part of one. Because I was going to school with a mask on my face, hiding the fact that I felt lonely and I felt like I didn't belong. I was going to school with fake smiles, fake laughs, so I figured the people around me that called themselves friends, maybe they were fake too, because they didn't understand the true me, the true Jordan, and what I was going through. But I get to 9th grade and I get to high school. 9th grade was a time where there were a lot of firsts that were going on. It was the first time that I really started losing lack of interest in a lot of the things that I loved, especially like being able to play sports. I lacked any and all energy to actually go to school and concentrate. My appetite, my sleep were inconsistent. There were times where I could sleep all night and oftentimes be late for school. Or there were times where I would only be able to get 3 or 4 hours of sleep at night because I just felt restless and I felt like I couldn't stop my brain from going. And so all these thoughts, all these feelings, my appetite being so inconsistent as well, really affected me and my mood. I was so irritable. I would lash out at my parents for things that seemed really small and not a big deal. I would lash out at them like it was something that was the end of the world. And a lot of times they had no idea where this was coming from because, again, this is a time where I'm putting on that mask and not showing exactly how I'm feeling. The 10th grade comes around, and because of a mixture of all of those things combined, they said that I should go see a therapist, that we should go as a family. I didn't want to. I didn't feel like I needed to go see a therapist. So I remember my first time being in a therapist's office, I was very judgmental because I really didn't want to be there. I would try and pick one reason for why I didn't need to be there. So it actually took time. I had to switch therapists twice until I finally felt comfortable with who I was talking to. And even that third therapist I stuck with for the rest of high school, it probably still took a month or two for me to get used to talk therapy. Having someone help me process my mental health issues was just something I wasn't used to. So it took time to get used to that. But she's the one who diagnosed me with depression when I was 16. I didn't know what that meant because I didn't know what the difference was between feeling depressed and now actually having depression. And the best way I can explain it, I think it's relevant, especially for right now. And the best way I can explain it is anyone at any point or time can feel depressed, but more times than not, you know what you're depressed about, whether it's the anniversary of something very saddening to you, going through a difficult time at school, going through the times that we are right now can make someone feel depressed. But it doesn't mean that you have depression. Because for someone like me who has depression, I can wake up one day and have no idea why I feel so low, why I don't want to wake up and get out of bed, why I'm crying for no reason, depressed for no reason. There are times where it's frustrating. And it's not whether I'm going to wake up having depression or not, it's just what level am I on emotionally because of my depression. I didn't take it seriously when I was diagnosed with depression. I was prescribed medication, but I wouldn't take it on a consistent basis because I would either A, be annoyed that the medication didn't work right away, or B, I would take my medication for a month or two, start to feel better, and just figured that I had depression beat and cured, and I would stop taking my medication. So I did a really poor job of being consistent with taking that every single day. And I would lie to my therapist to get out of her office as quick as possible to just move on. And again, kind of escape from a lot of the things that I was going through. And then junior year of high school was really tough for me. I started drinking when I was in 9th grade, but by the time I got to my junior year, it progressively just got worse and worse. And then using that as another way to mask whatever I was feeling or any pain that I was in. It was the time where I really just didn't feel like getting up, going to school. I didn't feel like talking to anyone. I didn't feel like getting up and getting out of bed. Again, going back to that lack of interest, and it was the first time I'd really had this feeling of not necessarily a suicide plan, but just what would life be like for other people if I wasn't here. But my senior year, I was 18, beginning of my senior year, and I attempted suicide by going out of my 9-story bedroom window. When I hit the ground 100 feet below, as you can imagine, they were devastating injuries. And I wake up in the hospital. And I'm just looking around. I can't talk. I have no voice. Looking around, and I was so confused as to why these doctors and these nurses know my name and are talking to me like they know me when I have no idea who they are. But the reason for that is because I'd been at that hospital for almost 3 weeks at that point. When I got to the hospital, I was induced into a coma for 5 days, and I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. I still don't remember one moment of being in that ICU. And the other part of waking up in that hospital was realizing I had no idea why I was there. To this day, I don't remember going out my window. I remember everything else leading up to that event. I remember my class that morning. I got to golf that day, but going out the window, I don't remember. This was impulsive. I didn't plan my suicide attempt. That was a Friday that started out just like any other Friday of high school. But for some reason, that was the day my brain said, I don't belong here anymore. So the doctors at the hospital wanted to see if I remembered on my own. And so I didn't, but my sister's visiting. And to this day, Tara and I remain very close, best friends. I just talked to her actually earlier today. So I asked her, I had to mouth to her because I couldn't talk for 2.5 months because of this trach that was in my throat. So I mouthed to her, what happened? And she starts to get a little teary-eyed, and she looks at me and she says, "You went out of your window." There were so many thoughts and questions in my head, but the first is, that's impossible. I wouldn't survive a 9-story fall. Even if I did, how drunk was I? To accidentally go out the window, did someone drug me, push me out my window? What happened? She said, no one was in the room and you were completely sober. At that point, there were 2 things I had to accept. 1, physically, my body would never be the same. 2, that this was a suicide attempt, that this did happen. Being able to accept those 2 things is really what helped me make probably one of the biggest decisions I've ever made, in my life. Because while I was in the hospital, a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper named Michael Vitez reaches out to my dad, asks if he could interview me about what happened. My mom said no. This was within a month of this happening, so she thought it was too soon, something I may regret later down the line in life. My therapist at that time thought it was a terrible idea. My sister and my dad were on the fence about it, but they left it up to me. When my dad asked me if I would do this interview, if I would tell my story for the first time, I said yes almost immediately. Because at that point, I was the 18-year-old senior in high school, and I was down to 80 pounds. I couldn't move, I couldn't talk. I had been told by doctor after doctor that I would never walk again, that I would never get out of a hospital bed. So I figured by literally spelling out every single word of that interview on an alphabet chart, people on the outside of the hospital can touch the words. I don't have a voice to say. So that whoever reads this article, whoever hears about this story, is never the position that I'm at right now, lying in this hospital bed. When the story came out in January of 2008, it was incredible to hear feedback from people who thanked my family for sharing this story. One of the people that reached out to me was a woman named Susan Saylor. She worked for this organization called Minding Your Mind. She emails my dad and asks if she could meet me and talk to me more about my story. So we meet with her and we talk for about an hour. And she told me that Minding Your Mind was having this forum led by 4 speakers. And 2 of the speakers I knew of, because one of them was Ross Sabo, who's a international public speaker on mental health advocacy. I knew his book, Behind Happy Faces. And the other guy I knew was Joey Pantoliano, because he's been in a lot of movies. That's pretty much what I knew him from. And so I went, and I remember all 4 speakers went, and it was incredible. And afterwards, they opened it up for Q&A. And it started out like every awkward Q&A, just complete silence where no one said anything. And after a few seconds, I look at my mom and I asked her if she would push me in my wheelchair to the microphone so I could ask a question. And I don't know where this came from. I really don't, but I grabbed the microphone and I said, my name is Jordan Burnham, and this past September, I attempted suicide by going out of my 9-story bedroom window. My question is, how can we help young adults talk about suicide and mental health in an open and honest way? I believe it was, Ross answered my question, and Joey asked me how I was doing. And I said, I'm still just taking it a day at a time. It's always a process. 2 weeks went by after that forum, and Joey's agent emailed my dad asking if I wanted to go speak to Congress. And I didn't have anything planned that day, so I said yes. And I got to go, and that was my first ever public speaking engagement, was to Congress and sharing my story. From that day forward, when I was 18, up until this point now, so 12 years later, I'm still doing the same thing, of sharing my story. It hopes to make a difference and helps for other young adults to share their stories too, because that's really important for me. So what is, I always want to think about what is life like today as not just a speaker, but as well as someone who still has depression and still has to cope with it. Over the last 12 years, I've had a lot of incredible experiences. One of them being at a conference. I guess this would have been 7 or 8 years ago. I was at a conference and it was finally time for lunch, and I was exhausted. I was ready for my downtime and ready to eat. And this young lady and her mom decided to, wasn't upset that they interrupted me eating, but I was, happy to meet them. And the young lady said, my mom and I were thinking about starting a foundation because I lost my brother to suicide. We would like to start a foundation in honor of him, in honor of his name. She said, it's probably going to be the most amazing foundation ever. So if you don't want to be a part of it, it's not a big deal, but we just wanted to make you aware of that. And the young lady who interrupted my meal and has yet to apologize was Lauren Anderson. And that's how I got involved with the Josh Anderson Foundation and being able to partner with them and speak for them a decent amount of times in Fairfax County, which is something that I really do cherish and am grateful for. The other part of being here today is kind of how I cope with my depression before this coronavirus and how we're coping with things and kind of how it is now. So for me, my coping skills before, walking. I loved going for walks because I loved being able to get out of my own head. being able to think, have my own thoughts. Usually I don't even take any AirPods because I don't like listening to music or podcasts when I'm walking. I kind of like to listen to the stillness and calmness a lot of times whenever I'm going for walks. The other thing is I love being able to listen to music. Music is a huge part of me dealing with whatever mood that I'm in. It's an escape for me. Writing, journaling is something that's incredibly big for me, especially journaling when I'm struggling, because I like being able to write down exactly what I'm feeling at that moment, because then you read it a month, 2 months later, and you realize how much progress you've made without even realizing. And so that's a big part of how I cope with depression as well, with those coping skills. Then it goes to therapy. I still see a therapist on a regular basis. I still take medication on a daily basis and do a much better job with that. I have a support system from sobriety. I feel very fortunate to say I'm almost 4 years sober today. And part of that is having a support group in sobriety, people that I met and talk to on a regular basis. That's huge. Having friends, having family, also a big part of my support system, but it's a healthy balance of all of them, because I could never just depend on one person or one part of it. So I could never just depend on my therapist when coping with my depression. I could never just depend on my fiance or my family or friends. It's really a group effort as far as finding the support system that works best for you with whatever you're going through. How does that look today? I still talk to my therapist. That's the one nice thing. It's a little weird. It took some time to get used to having a therapy session using a computer, but it's still a lot better than just not having any kind of therapy session at all. My sobriety group probably talk even more now that all of this has happened. We will go on Zoom or we'll hop on the phone and we'll all talk through that way. My friends, we have this group chat, and I know that right now we're being told to quarantine and social distancing is the most important thing, but it doesn't mean that you have to disconnect, because this is probably the most connective I've felt to my friends in a long time. Because we talk all throughout the day, we talk about different topics and we support one another. And so being able to have that is huge. And I was nervous about all of this because one of the things I tried to avoid with my depression is isolating. I wanted to make sure I was getting myself out. I was going to a movie theater. I was going out amongst people and trying to be active. But I don't look at this as isolation. I think I just look at this as an opportunity to learn more about myself, to try new things like cooking, which I don't know if I'm doing a good job of. I don't know if my fiance is too honest about that. I hope so. But being able to try and cook actually regularly, like for the first time, setting a routine, even though I don't really have any specific place to be or go, I still like to have some type of structure and routine going through all of this, because that's a big part of my depression too, is being able to be productive and having that structure. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to try and end on, is not just my story and what happened, but again, how I cope with things today. And I will end by saying that another one of my coping mechanisms that I mentioned was sports. And I love being able to play sports, and basketball is still a huge part of that. I love being able to shoot basketball. And Lauren Anderson, so we had a day where we didn't have a presentation. So she said, let's play one-on-one and we'll take it easy. I'm not that good, which, so we go to play, and yes, you won, but I think there was a lot of traveling. There was a lot of double dribbles that I didn't call. There was charging on anyway. So Lauren, to this day, is one of my favorite people to not only work with in mental health advocacy, but also is one of my favorite people that I let beat me in basketball. And so with that, I would like to thank all of you for letting me share my story, and I would love to hear from all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Can't wait to get back on that basketball court whenever this is all said and done. Thank you for sharing your story, Jordan. Really appreciate it. Even to do this virtually, which I know is difficult to kind of not have that direct feedback and be in a space. So really appreciate you kind of taking the time to try this out. I hope that it was helpful for others to hear someone's story.
Our Minds Matter Minding Your Mind basketball tournament?
Maybe.
Any other basketball players on this call? I know I'm not. I'm seeing some head nods. Well, I think what we want to do is actually turn the discussion over to the students and alumni and even the sponsors that are on this call to hear about maybe any reactions you have or thoughts after hearing from Jordan. And just remember to unmute yourself, because I know all of you are on mute, and I thank you for that. Just be sure to unmute yourself before you share a thought or question.
Hi. So I'm someone who I really want to thank you for sharing your story, Jordan. It really puts into perspective on how, you know, depression genuinely works. Because as a kid, I never really truly understood what it means to have mental health awareness. My family never really truly understood it. It was something that I had to figure out for myself, and I still have to figure it out to this day. So hearing someone who's dealt with similar issues that I've dealt with as a child, it really just made me put, you know, some things into perspective. So I really want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Just get it taken out. Because it's done, it's just not golden. Take it out when it's golden. Thanks.
We have a chat of someone sharing that they lost a friend to suicide, and that this story gave them more perspective on the topic, and that they're grateful that you're using your story to help break the stigma. So is there anyone else before we move on to our next discussion question that might have a question for Jordan or just want to share any reactions or thoughts?
Jordan, I'm wondering what it was like for you to hear in the hospital that you might never leave like the hospital bed again, to being able to play basketball and go for walks and have all these new hobbies.
Yeah, I'll never forget. Doctor, we call it, yeah. So this doctor was not very, but he was right to the point. Sorry. So when I was in the hospital, it was it was an adult hospital, and it's a 9-story fall, and the doctors were just straightforward with everything and honest with how they felt, and that was just the reality of all the injuries, was that I most likely would never be able to get out of a hospital bed and never be able to walk. But it was probably the best thing he could have told me, because it took 4 years to be able to walk again. So if that point when I was 18 in that hospital, if the doctor would have said, hey, you're not going to be able to walk again for another 4 years, but you will be able to walk, I probably would have been devastated to know, oh, that's how long it will take. But also, I wouldn't have appreciated the small victories that came along the way of being able to walk. So like, I remember the first time that I stood on my left leg for the first time and put weight on it. That meant that I could keep my leg, that they weren't going to cut it off. I remember the first time I stood for just 3 seconds, and it was the biggest deal in the world at that moment, because it's just something we never thought we'd be able to have, is for me to physically kind of get that life back. So in my mind, I thought, if I'll never walk again, if I never get out of a hospital bed, I will be grateful for every little small victory that comes along this way. And so I could have never guessed this, of being able to just walk and get around in the way that I do. But every day I'm just grateful for it.
Awesome. I'm so glad you've had such an amazing recovery, and thanks for sharing your story.
Hello, I actually had a question. So first off, Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your story. I was also wondering, in your work as a mental health advocate, how how has this discussion around mental health sort of been brought up in especially like Black and Brown communities? Because I'm Eritrean myself, and mental health isn't something necessarily talked about a lot. It's not, I wouldn't say a taboo topic. It's just generally like, oh, like you have to work through this yourself sort of deal. So how has like that discussion of mental health in certain communities impacted like you, or how has your talks with them impacted like others?
Yeah, I think in with people of color, I mean, the not only the mental health, the conversation of mental health is often lacking, but then the second step of going to seek help, I think, is even a bigger a struggle in communities. And it's one of those things, there's a lot of layers to this. And so me personally, when I look around my family, when I look around at the people I grew up with, of, you know, why didn't we talk about mental health? A large part of it is because we didn't know, or we didn't use the terminology. We didn't use words like depressed. We didn't use words like alcoholic, or someone who has bipolar. It was described in some different type of way. So when you don't use a mental health word or a way of describing things, then you really don't know exactly what that conversation is supposed to look like or be like. Also, just the lack of education, a lot of times, of just not knowing exactly what talk therapy is, how to go about that, sometimes lacking the resources and able to actually go see someone and talk about a lot of the issues that can be a risk struggle. There's also, I would say, in the Black community, a sense of what happens in this house stays in this house. And going to seek help for mental health is something that doesn't align with that. And so again, it kind of goes back into what are the norms in different communities. And the norm when my parents were growing up is you went to church and you prayed, or you talked to the preacher. And that was your way of going about feeling sad or feeling down. That would be the place you would go, is to the church. And so how does that look like as people get older and as we grow up and as we become a little more educated? I think we are getting to the place where more people are aware and more people are exposed to mental health issues, and especially celebrities too. Seeing people of color talk about this is the best thing that you can do. I always used to think being a role model meant I have to walk this certain path and I have to talk and be a certain way. But sometimes just by speaking and being the person that you are and looking the way that you are and using that voice to talk about mental health is all another person needs to continue that conversation and keep it going. So I think I've seen progress over the last 11, 12 years of doing this, but I still think we have a long way to go, especially with the education and the resources that are needed so much with communities with people of color.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that really answered it. And again, thank you for sharing your story. It was incredible.
And then I think I think Sheridan has a question, so I'm gonna unmute Sheridan. I see you have your hand raised. I think you should be good.
Hi, Jordan. It was so great to hear your story. I'm actually a senior in high school right now, and I hear a lot of people talking about suicide and just their thoughts on the current situation that we're in with the global pandemic. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on how to respond to people who joke about suicide or just make that statement of, ugh, I'm going to kill myself, and how I as a student can respond to that and not be negative about it or not, I don't know how to word it, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do other than go to an adult or an authority and say, I'm concerned for this person, and accidentally ruin something for them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, one, for sharing, and also your question too. So much of our society and the things that we've gone through as a culture, today, some of the norms that we discuss were just not discussed decades or years ago. So it becomes, how do we use language to talk about certain things? And I think suicide is still where we have a lot of progress to make as far as people joking about it, but also some of the language that they will use. So for me, when I hear someone say commit suicide, I don't say it in that way. And a lot of people in the field do not look at seeing it in that way as positive in any way. It doesn't sound right because it sounds like committing. When you say commit, there's a lot of things that you commit that are this crime or really negative. So when someone loses someone to suicide and all of a sudden you hear commit suicide, you can see how someone would take offense to that, how someone might be upset with that. And that's how a lot of times I try and frame certain things in discussions of, can you see why this could be insensitive? Can you see why someone might be offended by this? So that I would say even like bipolar too. People joke all the time of he or she is so bipolar, I can't stand it. They're happy one second and they're mad the next. That's bipolar. And with some of that, it's hard because it's one, you want to try and correct and kind of educate, but it's hard with kind of that verbal, how you use the certain words in a way that normalizes certain things. And it's not about necessarily trying to make things, trying to think of the right way to put it, but for suicide, so with someone who says commit suicide, what I always say is, hey, next time, here's some of the reasons why people don't say commit suicide. Here's why I say died by suicide, or I say I attempted to take my own life. Here's why I don't say this. And sometimes that person gets it. Sometimes not right away they do, but sometimes it takes a little bit for them to understand it and for them to get it. And then it becomes a normal way of, all right, this is how we're supposed to talk about certain things. And this is definitely not how we're supposed to talk about suicide or talk about other mental health disorders in a way that's shaming or making fun of people. So what I would say is you can only do what you can, what you can control. In doing that is not by saying, hey, stop doing this, don't say it that way. It's more of a, hey, can you see it from this angle? Can you see it from my point of view or from other people's point of view? Can you see how this might be insensitive? Hopefully there's a more organic conversation that comes about from that. Sometimes not, but I think that's the way I would say going about having those kind of conversations, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Jordan, and thank you for all of your really thoughtful questions. And just wanted to bring attention that we do have our clinical psychologist, Dr. Jen Lane Armican, on Zoom. So if you do have a direct question or need some support, you can message her directly. We'll also be sending out her contact information if you would like to reach out in the coming days. And you know, I think that reading the group chat, you know, everyone's really touched and moved by your story, Jordan. And so again, thank you for sharing that. And what I would love to do before we have to move on, just for the sake of time, is for us all to chat something in the box about what you're focusing on to stay well during COVID-19. We're all experiencing this together. I think Jordan shared some ways that he copes, and I think it could be really helpful if we all share what we're doing to stay well, to maybe try out some new ideas that we haven't tried before. So we'll take 30 seconds or so to chat, everyone. Getting fresh air. I'll just read some of them off. Getting fresh air, making sure to keep in touch with friends, keeping myself busy, organized, reading books, staying in touch with friends, singing, learning sign language. That's very cool. Staying consistent. Lauren Anderson, wearing real clothes, taking a shower. Focusing on making sure my dog gets a long walk. Good exercise for both me and him. Cooking. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. We really, really appreciate it. And Jennifer Layden says, here and happy to chat with anyone who would like to debrief coping with oriented towards gratitude and leaders I respect and trust like Jordan. Thank you. Awesome, you're getting CPR certified, Sheridan. Alrighty, so before we move on to our closing ritual, which is 5 minutes or a little bit with Lauren Anderson, we just have a couple of announcements, and we will send this link out after the meeting. So make sure you did sign in so we can send you that recap email. But as you guys know, we're always researching how we can improve the program, and Our Minds Matter is a student-led program, but we do have to have club sponsors and adult support students. So we're just trying to figure out from a student's perspective what the optimal level of involvement with your club sponsors would be. So there is this team function survey, and again, I'll send out the link to just assess how much involvement do you think you need from your club sponsors or adult supporters in order to accomplish your club goals. Also, we still have our This Is My Brave auditions. I believe those are happening like the 3rd week of April or 3rd or 4th weekend. So make sure if you're interested in that to sign up. I will include that in the recap email. If you didn't get a chance to take our virtual leadership training, that link is available. If you're interested in one of the internships, you can email me. And our next meeting, I believe we had you guys submit some topics, and one of the topics was about self-esteem and self-love. So we have a guest speaker, Chelsea Green, who is a licensed professional counselor, and she will be on talking about self-esteem and taking us through a mindfulness exercise. Alrighty, now I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Great. All right, guys. So let's take some time, especially after we might be feeling a lot of things, and we definitely will follow up with, you know, the resources should you need to kind of process a little bit more and have some further support. So just want to say that. But for now, we can just tune into our own resources that we have within us, that we always have. So just take a couple of minutes or moments and get yourself nice and settled wherever you're sitting. You might kind of shift your weight a little bit. I like to kind of, you know, find myself sitting nice and firmly on the chair, maybe feeling your feet on the ground. So feeling the weight of your right foot on the ground, feeling the weight of the left foot on the ground. And we'll just start to take a couple of big cleansing breaths in and out. So taking a big breath in through the nose. And an open mouth exhale. Good. Taking a big breath in through the nose. Open mouth exhale. And just keep doing that, breathing in through the nose, breathing out of the mouth. And you can close your eyes if you'd like, or have a soft gaze, just to start to turn your attention to your senses. So when our eyes are open, we're kind of, you know, engaged with all the stimuli outside of us, but kind of turning our attention to our senses. So we're noticing our sense, the sensation of breath moving in and out of the body. As you take your next breath in, maybe noticing where you feel the breath coming into the body and where you feel the breath going out of the body. You can even say to yourself, I am breathing in, or think to yourself, I am breathing in. And on the exhale, I am breathing out. So continuing to notice your breath, breathing in, big breath in, big breath out. Good. And then knowing you can always come back to your breath whenever you're starting to feel just a little bit kind of revved up with any anxiety, or just noticing your headspace kind of moving in a spiral. Coming back to your breath by breathing in, saying to yourself, I am breathing in. Breathing out, saying to yourself, I am breathing out. And trying to notice the sensations you feel as the breath comes in, maybe the temperature of the air as it moves into your nostrils, and the temperature of air as it moves out. And let's take 3 more cleansing, mindful breaths together. Inhale, feeling that expansion. Exhale, releasing tension in the shoulders. Good. Inhale, I am breathing in. Exhale, I am breathing out, tension releasing in the hips. Good. Inhale, I am breathing in. Exhale, I am breathing out. And just take a moment to notice how the body feels, the mind feels. Whatever you're experiencing, just knowing that it's exactly where you need to be, nothing to change, knowing we can always move with whatever we're experiencing with our breath. Can always come back to the breath. So thank you for taking a couple of minutes to practice some mindfulness. And this is something you can do maybe in the follow-up email. We can also share some mindfulness apps that are free right now, should you want to kind of continue to bring some of this mindfulness and breath work into your days.
Thank you, Lauren. So we had a lot of fun with our virtual challenge. We loved reading all the different things that are providing you joy and relief during this time of uncertainty. So I screenshotted Jimmy. Are you on? I didn't see if Jimmy was on this call, but I put his up. But waking up early and watching the sunrise, kudos to him. Jamming to music, listening to grandma's stories because she has so many. So there were some really great stories that we reposted. So I hope you got a time to look at that. And our next challenge is to create an Our Minds Matter playlist. So I added the first song, We're All in This Together, from the High School Musical cast. So what we're gonna do is we'll post on the Instagram at our.minds.matter for you guys to drop in your favorite song that you're listening to right now, so we can put out a playlist that we can all share and listen to. Alrighty. Well, with 1 minute remaining, does anyone have any thoughts or takeaways from this meeting? I know that we would love to hear any feedback you can drop in the chat box, or anything you're taking away from today's meeting.
And I would just say, make sure to sign in so we have your email, because we'll be following up with some of the things we mentioned, and Dr. Leighton Armican's contact information and some mindfulness resources, as well as some of the announcements that we had today. So sign in and we can make sure to get that out to you.
I just wanted to say that This has been my favorite and best day and happiest day since all of this virus, lockdown, quarantine has happened. Because this is all I've known since I was 18, was sharing my story. And so to do this today, honestly, just meant so much to me for so many different reasons. But I do want to thank everyone for listening, but I also want to thank Lauren and Laura Beth for asking me to do this, because this has been absolutely my favorite day. So thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing your story.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much, Jordan. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Really loved seeing most of your faces. And we'd love to have more people join us as well, and hope this can be a resource for your friends and your other club members. So make sure to let everyone know about our next meeting, and hope to have a great virtual meeting next week.
Thanks, everyone. Look out for that recap email later this evening. Elise, are you having trouble ending the meeting?
Bye.
Bye. Hi, Jordan. Thank you so much. How are you feeling? What did it feel like to do that?
It's weird because I was telling one of my coworkers, when I speak, I become more confident by body language. And so it's like, it's weird to speak and not know where everyone is at if we're on the same page. And then I think it's also weird. I don't know the timing of it. I don't know if I'm talking too fast, if I'm talking too slow, like kind of relaxed. I don't know. But no, it was awesome. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. It was so fun.
Yeah.
And the comments were so nice.
Yeah, I think it was awesome. I'm totally with you on even when I'm doing like the short little like mindfulness session,
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's hard because you're getting like zero feedback,
Right.
like partly you're like, can everyone hear me? Like, and you just have to like go with it. But I thought it was amazing, and clearly from everyone's reactions, it was super impactful. So I think, of course, it's like seeing you in person is like, amazing, but I think this is like the next best thing, and still getting your story to students is really awesome.